Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Colin Cowherd podcast. Go on, hit that subscribe button if you're new so you don't miss any of our great football content this season. Listen, there are sometimes things happen in sports, and most of the time, you and I can talk our way through it. We make a couple calls, we have context, we can figure it out. Kalin DeBoer wasn't just a good coach. He was almost unbeatable with Washington's B to B plus talent. Alabama's got much bigger size, much greater speed. They couldn't run the ball at all. DeBoer has now lost, I believe, to 4 unranked teams. I didn't know what to make of Ty Simpson. But I don't have an answer because, I follow Husky football. Like, I know their personnel really well. And maybe Penix is better than I thought. And they also had really good wide receivers, Roma Dunze, Polk. They had really good receivers. Washington was a quarterback receiver program. But they're not terribly creative. They can't run the football. The NIL, you're not going to buy out Kalen DeBoer for 70 and they then pay 85 to 90 for another coach. Plus, Bama can barely afford the NIL. They're holding bake sales for that stuff. And I think the SEC's fine, and I've been talking about this for 2 years. At a lot of SEC schools, the big car dealer is the rich guy. The car dealer is like 7th to 10th in line at a lot of these programs like Oregon and Ohio State and Michigan, Penn State. It's not just the car dealer.
How many millionaires and billionaires does Marcus Freeman meet as his alumni booster base?
Same with Michigan. So Brian Kelly's complained about this a little bit. It was kind of predictable. Small southern towns. Alabama has maybe 1 or 2 big donors. Bear Bryant's son, I think, is their biggest donor.
Yeah, he is.
But I don't know exactly what you do, and I don't know how to explain it. I think they're pretty ordinary at quarterback. That's pretty clear. They still recruit very well. But some of this, this goes back to Saban, like the first year of the NIL, when he started kind of grumbling about it. And I had somebody who I trust tell me he knows he can't compete with the Texas schools. Remember that last game he played Sark? And Texas was bigger on both sides of the ball. We hadn't seen that in 15 years. Even LSU didn't look like Alabama. Maybe Georgia did. I don't know. I just don't know the answer to solve this because DeBoer it's off center.
I've always theorized, and I've told you about this, about regions in college football matter. We're in the NFL. Andy Reid could coach Tampa, Kansas City, the Rams. Like that, it doesn't matter in the NFL. In college, it does. There's a reason like Kirby and Dabo are in the South, not at the University of Washington or at Michigan. It doesn't work. We saw Rich Rod try to go to Michigan, and it flopped. Think about who DeBoer, a couple years ago, Fresno State played ASU, and I went to the tailgate, and I went to the game, and I was with a bunch of, older players, but there was a young guy there who had just played for both Tedford and DeBoer. And he said, the thing about Kalen, I was like, what's his secret sauce? He's like, he's actually pretty mellow. He's not a rah-rah, intense. Tedford, while being a West Coast guy, he's from LA, Fresno State, Oregon, Cal, kind of an old school hard ass. Like Tedford might have been an outlier, probably could have pulled off coaching in the South or coaching, Ohio State or something like that personality. That is not Kalen. Think who Kalen, I know he technically didn't take over for him, but he essentially did. Chris Peterson is a cerebral. He's a psychological, like he's a motivating by kindness, kind of like a different version of Pete Carroll. Like Pete Carroll resurrected his career at USC in 2001 in the early 2000s. I don't think he could have done it at the University of Florida or at Georgia. I don't think it works. And I think everyone at that university, and I know we got new players, but the administration, everyone around there was kind of used to Nick Saban being the dictator. Nick Tater was his name. And they kind of liked it because everyone benefited. Everyone got rich off it, and you just kind of fell in line, and he screamed at you. It's weird. Like, obviously, he's an impressive guy, but he's an asshole in the football sense, in the leadership sense. He had a Steve Jobs-like quality to him that it's hard to replicate that. They don't really exist. Urban kind of had that.
Yeah.
And it works. Now, you got to come through, but there's a reason every single former player, whether you played in the NFL or you didn't, the way they talk about him, because they know, like, listen, if you just follow his lead, he's leading you the right place. Kalen's not like that. And I think these guys at the program, on and off the roster, are used to Nick, and his style is the polar opposite. Look at Texas. You had Mac on when I was on your show. Mac's kind of an easygoing, it's North Carolina, Texas. He would have thrived in Los Angeles. I bet everyone at the country club loves Mac. Sark's like that. So Texas actually, Nick might not have worked there. Remember when they were going to sign him like a decade ago?
Yes.
Probably would have failed. Maybe they needed a guy. Pete Carroll probably would have worked at the University of Texas. You know, where, you get Oklahoma. Stoops a little more of a hard ass and Venable. Like they've had historically a little bit more Barry Switzer, a little more edge to him.
Yes.
And I just don't think in the South, like at Florida, at Georgia, like whoever, if Kirby were to leave the NFL in a couple years, you could not bring in Kirby is basically a younger version of Nick. And I'm not just talking about the players. I'm talking the entire school feeds off that vibe. Kalin is just like goes like there's been these weird reports about people up late. It's like, I don't know. This is not going to work.
Well, I mean, I remember hearing a story years ago. Somebody asked Nick Saban about coaching at USC. I mean, like, remember when Texas made a run at him and there was talk that, USC would make a run at him. And somebody told me through like a source of a source of a source. So I don't know how accurate it is, but, Nick had said, when you recruit in the South, it's yes, sir, no, sir. It's very formal and respectful with athletes. He goes, you recruit out West, they're on their iPhone. And when you're pitching them, like they're distracted kids. They're from the big city. It's different. And I think Nick worked in the South twice. Remember when Nick got to the NFL, there were all those discussions, no eye contact, don't talk to Nick. How much is true? Stuff usually has their threads of truth in that stuff. My take is Nick is a very intense guy, and he works in an incredibly intense environment. He would be frustrated as hell going to some of these like laissez-faire program. USC, it's got that California cool, kind of the beach thing. I mean, they love football, but it's not ever. Pat Hayden was always like, when he was there, he would say, we want our kids to have a life. That was not a thing with Saban.
Well, it's just a different human being. Even though we all live in America, recruiting Santa Margarita or Centennial Corona. I remember when I was with the Eagles, Fletcher Cox was going to be a top 15 pick. We ended up he could bareback horses. So the kids in the South, they're coming from much more of a rural. It's a different world.
Yeah.
It's like they all are hunters. Their psychological makeup as people is completely different than the West. I've never lived in the South, but being around football and knowing these guys and knowing people just through football, spent most of my time out here in the Northeast. We are wired completely different than that region.
Oh yeah.
And now some of these quarterbacks, right, from Southern California have gone.
Listen,
to the South,
I vacation in the summer in the Northeast. It is very much a discussion is what Ivy League school did your kid go to? Like entire families in this area that I'm in. And my wife and I just sort of laughed. I'm like directional school. She's Ball State, and we just laugh at it. It's like, and the people are nice. They're gracious. They're not in your face, but it's just like, it's Dartmouth, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Penn talk. And it's just the culture in the Northeast is the Ivy League and it's academic. And I love it. I love all that, that tradition. I didn't live it. But I lived in the Pacific Northwest. It's crunchy. It is really liberal. It is live and let live. In my high school, a third of the class smoked pot. We had keggers every night. It was like, it's just a different world. So I do think Kalin DeBoer may not be a perfect personality fit. But
they are stuck with them, like you said. This notion, and listen, I've seen a lot of like reputable people like, hey, could Gruden $60-70 million to buy him out. The roster costs $20 to $30 million, so that's about $80-90 million. And like you said, they don't want to hire some random, so that the next guy is going to cost $80-90 million. His coordinators are really expensive. It is a very, very lucrative endeavor to pull the trigger. What happened to Jimbo Fisher a couple years ago? That is not taking place anymore. So unless Kalin just quits because he hates it there and it's like, hey, I could go back and coach Cal or some school on the West Coast, which makes much more sense probably for him. He's not going to give up that much money, so they are kind of stuck with him. And listen, they've lived a pretty privileged life. I mean, it'd be like they're at the level of they had like Bezos or Larry Ellison money, and now they feel broke. This isn't I was worth a couple million. Now I got nothing. They were living high on the hog, right? And this is very glaring to them. I would also say that the no-ranked teams. I do think on a year-to-year basis, 2 years ago, Florida State went 13-0. The Rams' best defensive player is now Jared Verse. Their second or third best player is Braden Fisk. Renardo Green, the corner, starts for the 49ers. Keon Coleman is the number 1 or 2 wide receiver for the Bills. I mean, that was an SEC team. So what if we look back Florida State, like Miami and Clemson, like all 3 of those teams are just really good this year? Well, I think it's very possible. I watched enough football to know those 3 teams have a lot of talent on their roster right now.
They did.